really excited to introduce our panelists to you. I know each of them personally. Some of them we go way back. And so I'm going to start with Erica Lee Garcia. So she is a visionary professional engineer whose journey spans automotive manufacturing to nonprofit leadership. With a Six Sigma black belt, she embodies the fusion of technical mastery and heartfelt empathy. Through her charity and nonprofit, Engineers of Tomorrow, Erica champions the future of engineering, proving that innovation thrives when nurtured with kindness and a commitment to making a tangible difference. $364 million worth of difference, to be exact. Next, introducing Dr. Hoda Ihsan, a trailblazer in engineering education who shapes the minds that will define our future. At the Hill School, she doesn't just teach, she transforms learning into an adventure, founding Artec, A-R-T-E-C. She's created a space where curiosity meets creativity, proving that when children and adults come together to explore engineering, the possibilities are boundless. Her work exemplifies the power of collaborative problem solving and innovation. Dr. Shiroshi Baduri, she's a vanguard at the nexus of human experience and technological advancement. At Amazon and previously at McGraw-Hill, Shiroshi employs AI not just as a tool, but as a bridge to understanding, ensuring that technology serves to enhance our collective belonging in STEM. As a Society of Women Engineers Senator, she's at the forefront of fostering inclusivity, showcasing how diverse perspectives are not just beneficial, but essential for innovation. And finally, welcome to Catalina Herrera, a data and analytics virtuoso who turns data into decisions at Dataku. With over 15 years in the field, Catalina epitomizes the transformative power of AI and machine learning. She's not just about algorithms, she's about enabling enterprises to see beyond the numbers and unlock innovation. Through her work, Catalina demonstrates that the future of problem solving in STEM is not just collaborative, but also deeply interconnected with the intelligent use of data. So I'm so grateful to have our panelists here today, and I'm excited for you to get to know them through our conversations as well. So what you can expect today is I've got about 40 minutes of questions for our panelists and some Slido polls to engage you in a couple of different ways throughout. And we want to encourage you to submit your questions using Slido, and Elizabeth's going to drop that link in the chat, and I've got the QR code here in a second. But we want you to add your questions to the Slido, and then you can upvote them. And so this helps us prioritize questions just in case we're running out of time. Now, to test this and give you a chance to practice, we want to get to know the audience a little bit better. This is going to help us fine-tune our anecdotes and narratives for you today. So help us understand a little bit about who you are. And so if you can use your smartphone, or you can go to the link in the chat, just open up your camera, hover over it, go to the browser, and then select which of the following best fits you. We've got options of educator, industry professional, consultant, student, counselor, advisor. It looks like we've got mostly industry professionals today. We've got a good portion of educators and consultants. And then if you selected other, we'd love to hear a little bit more about your role in the chat. And we've got some students as well. And so we will hopefully have a few more people participate. When we give you a little bit of space to do that. And then if you miss this moving forward, you can contribute in the chat. So again, thank you for your participation here. Now we're going to dive in, and with our first question, my first question, I've invited and asked each of the panelists to answer this question. And the question I have for them is, can you share a moment from your career when teamwork transformed a challenge into an opportunity? And what lesson did it teach you about collaboration and STEM? And so let's start with Erica. Erica?
Thank you so much, Megan. I feel like I'm taking notes on how you just did that whole introduction thing and facilitated us and set it up. That was really beautiful. And I'm grateful for the chance to be here among so many accomplished professionals to have this conversation today. So I tried to think of one specific moment, but I think I'm going to cheat a little bit and answer this about many specific moments I have had throughout my career in a process that I facilitate repeatedly. So to begin with, to explain a bit about what I do, I facilitate breakthrough improvements for operational for industries, heavy industry mostly, mining and manufacturing. So to set the stage, the team is probably frustrated. They've had a chronic operational issue. They've maybe tried some things to get rid of it. They maybe have some ideas, but they're in such a firefighting mode. Anyone that's got industry experience or maybe co-op student experience knows that it can be very hectic in these environments where you're trying to meet these production deadlines, you're under pressure, you're trying to sort of juggle things and make it work, right? We don't always have a lot of time to sit back and think about the best way to do things. So the idea with a Kaizen event, which is one of the main things that I facilitate for my clients, is to create some space around one problem and to allow them to focus. And so I think there is, first of all, maybe the thing that it taught me is the power of giving people permission to focus on one thing at a time when they're juggling multiple priorities. Having that space, having that just permission to say, this is what we're all doing, really gives you outsized returns on the time and the energy that you invest in trying to solve a specific problem or move the needle on a specific issue. And I would say another lesson that came out of this or comes out of this almost every time I facilitate the process, and I've done dozens of them at this point, is that emotional wall that everybody hits at one point when you really hold them to the fire, because people are going to have different ideas about what's needed to move forward. People are going to bring different histories and different tolerances for the frustration that they felt. Maybe they tried something and it didn't work and they're still carrying that around with them. So throughout my engineering career generally, I mean, I think I expected it to be all about numbers and all about logic. And what I've learned in my career is that it's so much about the people and understanding those people, taking the time to see where they're at, not just what they know mentally, what their data points are, but also where their emotions are at, where their history is at, and how we can weigh those and leverage them positively, even if the emotions are quote unquote negative. And I see this so often. By the end of day 2 of a Kaizen event, it's usually a 3 to 5 day event, never fails. Everyone hits the wall, everybody gets cranky, because at that point, the gloves are off, people have stopped being polite, they're being very direct about where they're at. And that is where, if you can navigate the emotional part of it and bring everybody together again, really positively direct those emotions, there's gold on the other side of that honesty when everybody brings forth those perspectives and their pieces of the puzzle. So I guess I feel like I could say lots more, but the process, it's so fascinating and so rewarding. As you can tell, I get very excited about it. And that's part of what allows me to do the work I do, right? Is that I'm bringing this positive energy to the team and the groups that I work with to help them get through that valley of despair and really kind of earn the fruits of those differences of opinion and those different data points. So I hope that's
Thanks,
a good
Erica.
starting point.
Yeah, it's a great starting point. Okay, so Hoda, tell us about a moment from your career when teamwork transformed a challenge into an opportunity, and what lesson did you learn, or what did it teach you about collaboration in STEM?
Sure, as Erica did, I also want to thank you, Megan, for inviting me on this panel, among all these beautiful ladies here. And also, that was a wonderful introduction. I'm going to steal that and put it on my bio somewhere for the next, future things that comes up. But yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about that since I was invited on this panel. The challenging moments that there are so many challenging moments in all of our lives. Like, it doesn't need to be just STEM focused. It's really way bigger than that. And I think for many of us, we have seen how teamwork, how collaboration, how just sharing, simply sharing that challenge with other people had empowered us to move forward. Just think about one specific example I want to talk about, and it's something that happened a few months ago. So it's about a few years that I work with a very multidisciplinary and diverse team that we work on a research project and really both research to practice project on autism and engineering. And people from different institutions and really now at this point across the world. But we have been working really hard on that. So we have done some work, practical work, but then we decided that we want to move to get more funding and do some research on that. And we were so ready for it. We knew that it's gonna work, and we were just so confident in our abilities as well as the ideas and our knowledge and expertise of the entire team. So we put it together, we submitted it. The first time got rejected. We were like, well, the first rejections always happens from this foundation. But then the second time, you really worked hard on it, try to accommodate all the comments and feedback we received from every single person on the panel, as well as other experts of the field. And we submitted it. We got rejected again. So I think all those rejections, and that's not obviously the first time that we got rejected, and it won't be my last rejection. So I think as we got that rejection, the second time, all of us individually, as we were reading through the comments and feedback, we were so disappointed. The comments weren't the nicest or what we had expected. So I think we were very frustrated and disappointed on our individual part, but then we decided, let's just meet as a team and decide if we want to cancel this project altogether. It's not worth our time and effort. But then at that point, one of our team member who is more senior, more experienced, said, let's just read the comments together at the same time. Just like read it through and talk about each comment individually. It will hurt, but just let's see what it comes out of it. And I think what I saw the power of teamwork and collaboration and collaborating with diverse people there. As we started reading the comments together, and of course we were upset at 1 and 2, but then we realized that all those amazing ideas are coming back to us. The opportunities that we had missed, or we thought we have, or they thought that we need more, they all came together, and we not only resubmitted the grant, that it's still in progress, it's pending, but we also connected with few local businesses that do some similar work or could benefit from our work. And I think even if the grant doesn't get funded, just the collaboration and the network that we made with those two community members and amazing work that they do, and how we can contribute to their work, I think that was the reward, and it will be the reward. Hoping that it gets funded, but I think that was the moment that I was like, wow, like just the power of collaborating with different people, it just showed up and presented itself to a better idea.
Yeah, so what I hear in both of your stories is one, the sort of humanity that happens when you bring people together. So Erica talked about this sort of hitting the wall on day 3 and sort of getting it all out. And then when you're dealing with the rejection that you describe, Hoda, that's also pricking at our emotions. It can, sort of activate our inner child and make us not really see things with perspective. And so by coming together as a team and looking through that, it helps you to have greater perspective and analysis of that data and to move forward. Thanks for that. Catalina, what about you? A moment and a lesson.
Thanks, Megan. Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation. I love the passion of this woman and the way that we answer. It's like we know what we are talking about. We have been there and we fixed it. And I absolutely love that. So I am in software. I'm an electronic engineer, so I have a very strong background between hardware and software. And what that means is that usually there are a lot of teams involved when we are trying to make a decision. So if we think about that one moment, software future, for example, when you are trying to design between the backgrounds, including the engineer, the designer, the customer success, whoever else has a different goal that they are trying to accomplish. So for me, that teamwork and that challenge completely changes when we are all holistically very aware of what is that OKR or goal that we are trying to fix, and understanding that everybody brings different perspectives, different backgrounds, and thinking outside that box that comes from your individuality and your contribution and your background and your knowledge, and put that into perspective. And you just said it, Megan, and that's exactly right. Zoom out. So my invitation is zoom out and be aware that as a team, you are trying to solve a problem. You may have an OKR that you are targeting. You are trying to, how are you going to measure success? What it means success for that team. Therefore, everybody goes within this synergy and fits into that solution of that problem. But I think that is the opportunity to enhance the fact that we all bring different things to the table. And that is a phenomenal opportunity to kill it, knock it out the park. So as humans, we understand what we bring to the table, but at the end, we are trying to solve something together. So what is that outcome? For me, the lesson learned was, let's ensure that the customer has what they need, but it works technically, and at the same time, we know how to position it from the customer success experience. So you are fusioning all of those skills that you have with very diverse teams, which is extremely important, because having all of these insights is what makes the holistic solution really holistic. And it's targeting that OKR. So what is it that you are trying to accomplish? Is my lesson learned. The invitation to start from the end goal in mind before we sit down and do a brainstorm session. What are we trying to accomplish? What will be success? Therefore, let's embrace what we all bring to the table from different perspectives. You are muted, Megan.
Thanks, Carolina. So what she's talking about, as I interpret it, is design thinking. You're starting with that end in mind, thinking about what's the outcome that we want to achieve, and then how do we bring not only the right people to the table to help us get to the decision that we want, but really lead in a way that's activating and employing all of the skills of those people, and certainly the needs of the client, putting those front and center. Shrishi, what about you? What's your moment and a lesson that you want to share with our audience?
Thanks, and echoing all of the sentiments of the panelists. Thank you for having me. This is such a good energy to come talk about collaborative teamwork, I think, and learning from all of these different experiences. So when I was an undergrad, I had a professor, one of my favorite professors, Dr. Balakrishnan. In his office, he had like all of these inspirational posters, right? And I remember two of his posters. One was like, teamwork makes the dream work. And then the other one was teamwork, a process that allows ordinary people to achieve extraordinary results, or something like that. And as an undergrad, I just did not get it. I was like, I'm the only one working on assignments sometimes. On my project teams, we had slackers. I was also a slacker sometimes. So it was really difficult to grasp the context or the concept of teamwork and how that makes sense. And when you asked us to think about a moment, it was so difficult to come up with like one moment. So I wanted to focus on my first moment where I had that aha, with teamwork for me. And that was when, as a master's student, I was fresh out of undergrad. I had come to the US for pursuing graduate education, and I was in the mechanical engineering department. We were working on identifying rail breaks on railway tracks. And this was a project with industry collaborators as well as researchers from academia. I was working as a graduate assistant. And the whole team, we had like weekly meetings, and it was a very interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary team. Rather, we had folks from human factors, we had engineers, obviously, but we also had computer scientists, data analysts, the whole, like a lot of different expertise on the team. And we kept seeing a problem. Like one of the biggest challenges that we were facing was that there was a disconnect between the solutions that we were providing from a science perspective and what was happening at the practical level, like grassroots on the actual tracks. How were the technicians really implementing these solutions, so to speak? So at that time, it was purely manual. You were basically running this trolley on top of the rail tracks and trying to collect vertical acceleration signals, manually bring it back to lab, analyze it, and then say, okay, there was a break at this point. So that was not working. It was time consuming, resource intensive. There was a lag in terms of detecting the break versus actually going back and then fixing it. And so the team kept thinking about what are different ways that we can come up with to solve this. And my professor at that time, he kind of really, even though I was not an expert in mechanical engineering, I was just a student on the team, he encouraged me to kind of go out and find solutions outside of that disciplinary expertise. So he was like, go take classes in some other disciplines and see what are similar problems that they may be looking at for recognizing sensor technology, or looking at detection of some kind of anomalies or those kind of things. And that led me to take a course in machine learning and sensor technology, and come back to use machine learning to use AI to detect rail breakages. And that eventually went on to be my master's thesis, where we could predict with around 95% certainty that there was a break. We could predict it while the track was on the rail track, instead of bringing back the data to our lab. And so I think one of the biggest lessons from there was, for me at least, was to ensure that on your team, really listen to feedback from everyone. And this feedback, these new ideas, these innovations, they may come from people who you do not perceive as experts in the field. I was not an expert in mechanical engineering. I was not an expert in railway technologies, rail brake technologies. But to be able to take my feedback from what I'd learned in other courses as a graduate student and apply it to the context of our particular disciplinary focus, that is innovation and that is collaboration. So really, really learn to kind of highlight seeking and then acting on feedback that we collect from everyone on the team, irrespective of how we perceive them in terms of expertise.
Thanks so much. There were a couple of things that really stood out to me in what you said, and the first part of your narrative was about, you were, I think you said, a grad student or at least a college student when you were seeing these teamwork posters and asking questions about what that even means. And for those of us on the call who've survived any kind of education, and at least I can say in the United States, I don't think we're surprised by that. Because we talk a lot about teamwork, and we have a professional educator here with us, and we'll get her insights here in a minute. But I don't think we effectively teach teamwork within pre-college education. We teach students to divide and conquer on a team, but that's not actually working as a team, and that's very different. And I think it often takes us getting into professional environments where we're really forced to work on a team, and yet maybe don't have those skills. And so I want to ask Hoda, because you and I have both studied this in our doctoral work, but what are some of the key characteristics of a successful team in STEM that you found, and some of the things that you're teaching your students so that they don't have these moments like Shiroshi of like, teamwork makes the dream work? What does this mean, right?
No, I think it's like more than teamwork is frustration. It doesn't really contribute. Like when I'm thinking about a young kid, they would rather work alone, and really even adults, they would rather work alone than being frustrated with their team members. And I see that all the time, even in my students. So I do agree by just like having some quotes up and saying that teamwork is good. You're going to get everything with teamwork. And the student is like, no, I'm not. I'm actually better off working myself. But yeah, I think really the first thing that I always, and I know the question is about the key characteristics, but I think the first thing, even before getting to the key characteristics to the students, is to talk about the value of teamwork, talk about why we do teamwork and why it's important to do teamwork. And I think that's a really important lesson and understanding that students have to have before even we put them in teams, why we are doing this. And students, especially these days, they would ask you, why should I work with this person while they don't know anything and I know everything? And so I think just the why of we work together, it's really important to have that conversation. I usually allocate one session to just talking about what teamwork is, and why we do teamwork and why you think we do teamwork. So I open it up to them, asking them about why they think we do teamwork. Should we do teamwork? And have them hear their thoughts and each other's thoughts before I even start putting them in teams, before I even start asking them to write an essay on teamwork. I want them to really hear their thoughts and each other's thoughts on teamwork, the value of teamwork and the why of teamwork. But when I think about more professional settings, or even like student teams, I think the main important characteristics of teams is trust and respect. I think if our students do not practice, or our students and professionals do not practice trust and respect, is what I just said. Like kids can say, oh, this friend is really, they don't know anything. But if that trust and respect is there, they will take a moment before they even complain. They will take a moment to think about, well, why should I trust this person again? Why should I respect this person? Or even out of respect, they will allow the other person to talk, and they would allow that diverse perspective to come in play. I know it's very cliche to say teams allow foster creativity and innovation through diverse perspective, but I think if the trust and respect is not created first within the team members, we can't even get to that diverse perspective. And I've seen it all the time with my students. I've seen it even when I don't have a large team that I manage. I have 5-6 teachers that I work with in my department as a department chair. And I think that as I make sure that I try to put that trust and respect in place from the very beginning by sharing my experience, by having empathy with others, by understanding others, understanding their concerns. It really comes back to my design thinking approach in my life, and just creating that supportive environment that everyone can communicate, and also emphasize on strong communication with my team. And I do it with my students as well. I make sure that I meet with them individually. I make sure that we meet as a team. We hear each other perspective. I make sure that I have different venues of communication, because when we do communicate with each other, when we use different channels of communication, either through text or through in-person meeting or through call, I think that will create that trust and respect that we need. And then we can get to appreciate diverse perspective in our teams.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Hoda, about trust and respect. I could not agree more that those are really essential ingredients. And I would even add a third one to that. And maybe as far as we're having a conversation about engineering students and engineering culture and engineering professionals, I think this third one is sometimes missing. And I'm telling on myself too, as an engineer here, which is humility. And I think that that can drive the first two, right? In the sense of, if we're humble enough to say, I don't have all the answers, I can't do this myself, then I'm going to need to be open in order to get to my goal. Because I think we're all fundamentally problem solvers, and we want to serve, and we want to make cool stuff happen. And at some point, that positivity is going to help us get out of our way and get over whatever problems we're having, the hurdles in the way of that success or outcome, whatever it is. But if we're stuck in this place of, I have to prove myself, I have to be invulnerable, I have to know everything, then we're not going to have any opening to extend into that trust and respect. And I think that I can't help but think about engineering culture, the way we're socialized, those messages we get, what we get rewarded for, especially in the first couple of years of our education, and how that shapes our behavior. And it's so important, in my opinion, to get over that arrogance, get over that obsession with self-determination as quickly as possible, and be comfortable doing it. You can still be a competent professional and be confident in your abilities without walking around with that, I know myself, or even I'm better than other people, or engineers are better than these, shop floor people. however that might play out, I think that can just, it can be such an obstacle to everything we're talking about with collaboration and connecting and successful communication.
And I'm just gonna jump in because I absolutely love that. And I use that every time that I am speaking with a group of people that has the skills, engineers, data scientists, data analysts, all of us fit into that category where we think we are the last of the best, which most likely, but we bring more value when we actually connect that into the bigger picture, right? So what is the shared goal, and how what I am creating is not only my solution as the super cool engineer that I am, but also how do we connect that with who is going to be using it, what is going to be the UX, who is it for? It brings so much to the table when you have that perspective. So I cannot agree more with that. Strong communication skills, for sure, it's a must. The respect is a must, because when you have that mutual respect and come from that position of power, you do listen to each other, and you break a little bit that wall that you mentioned at the beginning, that emotional wall. There is, I have my solution, I am the best of the best, and that's it. So that level up of being humble enough to recognize that your solution is phenomenal, but it's going to be even better when more people understands, complements, enhance, and also do something with it, targeting that shared goal. So completely second everything that we have said so far.
I'll also chime in on this one. And the lens that I'm kind of coming at this question is from thinking about my experience with the Society of Women Engineers leadership team. And that is not your stereotypical like engineering team, because it's a team of engineers who are there to solve a problem for other engineers like themselves. So on the Senate, we do exactly the thought exercise that Hoda, you talked about, where, you know, one of our first meetings, every year we have new senators join in and older ones leave. But every year we do an exercise where we kind of ground ourselves to understand, okay, why are we here? What is our purpose as a team? What are we hoping to get out of this as part of a team? Because we recognize that unlike professional engineering teams, where we are basically paid for our time and our expertise and our contributions, with the Society of Women Engineers, it's a voluntary organization. There are people coming in from different walks of life, different expertise, different domain interests, who are coming together really bound by just one thing, like a shared commitment to Society of Women Engineers mission and vision, which is to increase belonging and inclusion amongst women engineers across the globe. And so grounding all of us at the beginning of each year to say, you know, we are here, we are volunteering our time, let's understand that this is not going to be a priority for us at times. There's going to be work, there's going to be family, and then there's going to be life, and then there's going to be SWE. But we still show up, we make this work because this is important to us. So like grounding that expectation. And I think I absolutely resonate with the humility bit, because as professionals, we're usually trained to kind of come in and exert our expertise. Like, I'm trained, I have a PhD in this, and you know, my way or the highway. And sometimes the environment within engineering can make it that. To succeed, you have to kind of make sure that, you know, you only showcase your wins, and you're not very humble, or you're not coming from a place of humility when you're approaching any kind of collaboration. But I think my experience with the Society of Women Engineers really taught me that, like, you know, you're allowed to fail. It's good to celebrate failures because we learn more from them sometimes. It's absolutely okay to be raw and real and have safe spaces within your team, because these are the people you can afford to lean on. And And one of the things that we do is really acknowledge positive inclusive behavior, because we are very intentional about calling out the negative behavior that we see in each other all the time. That's just something we are programmed to do. But we make it a practice, and it's a mechanism for us on the leadership team to really call out the good things, because that reinforces good behavior. And folks who don't know where to start know to look for, okay, that was good behavior. I love that you called out that you don't have time next week. This is not your priority. You set expectations for us. That's a win for the team, rather than, telling the person, oh, why don't you have time for us? This should be a priority for you. So like reframing the conversation as a win for the entire team, rather than really chiding an individual for not being able to make something work. I think that has really worked for me.
Thanks so much to each of you for your contributions. Now, you talked about trust, respect, humility, empathy, and understanding. And for those who are perhaps uninformed, these are really key principles that are aligned with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we see in our country, in the United States, this sort of anti-DEI movement. But what you're hearing here first, folks, is that we have to have these kinds of qualities to create good teams and outcomes. We have to be able to create places where people feel safe, where they feel like they belong, where they can experience trust. The psychological safety is so critical to creating the kinds of outcomes that we want. And so we have to continue these programs, because it helps us all to build the skills that we need. So continuing in that same vein, the next question, and you all have had such amazing, rich answers. We are not going to get through all 8 questions, but that's okay. So I may skip a little bit here for my panelists based on what we prepared. But I do want to answer this one specifically. And I think Sureshi, you said that you wanted to directly respond to this one first. So can you provide an example where diverse perspectives within your team led to a breakthrough design solution?
So yes, I really liked this question, because I think for the most part, most of us recognize that diverse perspectives are important, but we do not really understand, or we are not really trained to kind of resolve diverse conflicts, or conflicts that come off of diverse perspectives at times, because we are not speaking the same language. If you are truly diverse on a team, you're likely not speaking the same language. So grounding those expectations, I think, is key. But I wanted to bring up one example from my previous company, which is at McGraw-Hill. I was working with global people research, and global people research is essentially using a lot of analytics, data, science modeling to understand the employees at the organization, and seeing what are some of the ways we can inform leadership to take on initiatives that would support employee success. And so I was part of this group where a team of us came together across different teams or orgs within the company to think about a women's leadership initiative. And one of the first programs that we were talking about was a sponsorship related program, where we would basically design a 6-month or a 4-month long program, pair people up with executives, essentially, and then make sure that these folks, essentially women or non-binary individuals, we are bringing them in, they're able to take on certain projects, and then showcase that to leadership to get to the next step, essentially. And like I said, this team itself that was coming up and working on this idea or this project together was very diverse. So we had folks from engineering, we had folks from leadership and development, organizational psychology, all of these backgrounds. And one of the questions or conflicts that came up was from one of our directors, who is a very close friend, and she came from the perspective of learning and development. And she had very successfully run a mentorship program at the same company. And one of the feedback that she had received from the folks was that she had heard from few women to basically suggest that women were kind of sick of these. Like, it's like, why do women have to go through mentorship and sponsorship in addition to doing their day job and, networking with their managers and networking with their skip levels to then get to the next role, whereas a man just gets it? And we had not considered that because, the research that we were looking at was basically saying that sponsorship is great. It kind of gives people the visibility that they may be missing. It's better. It's like a step above mentorship in that it is helping the individual actually work on a project and then present it instead of just giving them feedback on their work or basically it's more intentional when it comes to career development for an employee. And we hadn't considered this perspective, and it kind of led to this weeks of debate, basically, like, does this make sense? Should we still go ahead with this? And what we did was, let's do a quick kind of research, like a swift research. We'll set up some interviews, do some focus groups to really understand if this is the predominant sentiment. And when we did do those focus groups, we found that yes, predominantly that was the sentiment when you dug deep. So yes, people were very excited about sponsorship opportunities because they agreed that it would give them visibility, but they were also frustrated that these needed to happen. And what we heard was, why are all of these sponsorship opportunities of, for, and by women? Where are the men? Where are the allies? Why are you bringing all of us into these programs and just making it for us and by us? Bring in the men. And so the breakthrough design solution that we worked on was to actually make an allyship development program part of the sponsorship program. So now our first step of the sponsorship program was to bring in the men, train them instead, and then have the sponsors work closely with these joint teams of men who were probably leaders. So it's not just women coming in both at the sponsor as well as the sponsoree stage and only women working for women. We actually had allies and an ally building network. So that kind of I guess we can call it a conflict, but it was also like just a diverse perspective of looking at the same problem really helped us come up with a holistic solution which worked for the people that we were designing this program for, rather than just plainly leading with what we thought was good data on how much adoption these programs were having and what the impact was on promotions. We were actually, like the conversation earlier, we were actually able to center the emotions of folks as well, which I thought was
Yeah,
really, really great.
thanks so much, Roshi. So a couple of things I heard in what you said is, one, just because you have a group of women designing something for women doesn't mean it speaks for all women, right? And so we have to ask people. We can't just make some of those assumptions. We have to really inquire and make sure that we're addressing the needs of people. Now, I'm going to skip around our questions here. So one of the things that we sort of set up in this talk, and our first panel in this series specifically talked about design thinking. So that's really not the key point of this. But what I do want to connect here is empathy. And so the question that I have I want to direct to Erica and her work is thinking about, how does design thinking, oh, sorry, nope, that's not the question I was going to ask. specifically asking about empathy. How important is empathy in the STEM field, especially when working in teams with clients or in design? And then again, on this previous screen here, I've got noted, like, this is the Stanford D School's design thinking process. It's a pretty standard model that many people use and follow in their work, but you'll notice that it starts with empathy. And just as a definition, I'll go ahead and define empathy. So empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. If you want to learn more about empathy, read anything from Brene Brown. She'll teach you a lot about empathy. So let's go back to the question, Erica, just a kind of couple-minute response thinking about this for our audience.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. I love that this question landed on me. I love it for so many reasons. First of all, because that design thinking toolkit is now being taught in schools. I know this because my daughters are young and they're learning the design process. They're not just learning the science fair process, right, that we learned, which is great. I don't want to slag science, but so much of our early education shapes the way that we think about these things and the skills that we develop that are the strongest. So I'm so optimistic about the future. Our engineering talent pipeline, starting from these kindergarteners that are learning about design thinking, learning about empathy, and getting the chance to start practicing and putting the reps in, as we might say, as in going to the gym and working those muscles. I'm so optimistic that we're starting to break down some of these perceived silos between the people who get the technical side, the wizards, the technical people, and the people who care, the humanists, right? And our education systems right now are built so much in these silos, and we can give the mistaken impression that the technical people just run numbers all the time, and the humanist people, they care about all of that messy human stuff, right? And the truth is just so very, very far from that, as we're seeing from so many of these anecdotes. So I'll say, first of all, that I think that the ability to empathize is not only a nice to have for engineering and STEM fields, it is a must have. In fact, I'll go even further and say that it's kind of the only thing that engineers have ever done is build stuff that makes lives better. So where did we think ever that we could get away with skipping over the human side? This is just a soapbox I will climb up on anytime you want me to. So I love that we're sort of really accentuating this. And I have an article that I'd love to share with you, written by a Canadian engineering dean. And I'll put a little trigger warning on it because it is sparked by the events of December 6th, which, as some of you might know, we had a tragedy that happened many years ago at an engineering school in Montreal. Very upsetting. Obviously, we observe December 6th every year as a conversation about women in engineering, violence against women, how that culture needs to change. And this article sort of springs from that place, and then it ends up in a very hopeful place, which is why I'm gonna place it in the chat if that's okay with you, because it's written about the urgent need to humanize engineering, talking about the why. Who are we helping? Why does it matter? What problem are we solving for those people? And it's not just about, say, building a robot or building a bridge. It's about the people that are going to receive humanitarian aid packages delivered by that robot. It's about the people that will be able to get to work 15 minutes earlier or get to the hospital in 10 fewer minutes. That could save someone's life if they're in an ambulance at some point in an emergency. So really connecting the benefit that ultimately always has been about humanity. There's some storytelling to do there. There's some dots that we can connect to show what engineering and maybe STEM fields have ultimately zoom out to that really, really big why. And I love getting people to talk about this in terms of why they chose their career. Talking to kids about this, especially because it just illuminates that side of things. We don't do the same jobs that we did even 10 years ago, let alone 100 years ago, when a lot of these disciplines of engineering were born, and a lot of these ideas about who belongs in engineering, what engineering is about, what STEM is about more generally have come from. So we really need that update. I think we need to tell those stories and really go out to say, this is not only a nice to have, this is all we've ever done, is understand people and serve them through our technical knowledge.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, even though that's what we've always done, there's so much work that we can do to improve it, especially as we increase our understanding of the specific needs and of people from traditionally marginalized and excluded populations. So often the empathy that was involved was about asking those people who were around you, and the people who were around you in engineering don't look like us. Back in the day. And so true empathy is making sure that you are reaching out to get the diverse perspectives and the needs, and asking the people who you're going to be serving for their input.
It's just the way we're supposed to have been doing it the whole time.
Yes,
I
exactly.
see sometimes like we're like gender inclusive design. Like we're now designing cities in a way that's safer for women. I'm like, that is the point. Women are half of the population. How did you think
Yes.
that not designing for them was ever okay? So maybe that's just a little bit of a semantic difference, but I think it's so, I think it's sort of big picture critical for us to really get clear on this is actually in the job description. This is just how we do what we're supposed to be doing as professionals correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks so much, Erica. So I want to jump back. I've got a question for Kylina about conflict, and then we're going to go to Hoda for some advice for educators, and then see if we've got any questions in the audience. So if you haven't submitted your questions yet on the Slido, I encourage you to do so. So Kylina, tell us, what do you think about conflict resolution? Because this is something that's come up in some of the questions in the earlier panels. We know it's going to happen. I think it was Shiroshi that talked about conflict that could happen on diverse teams as well. But what are some strategies that you've employed in your practice as an engineer and data analyst that have been effective?
So I'm gonna grab your sentence, Erika, because that is spot on. Humanize engineer. And with that being said, I will say that conflict is going to happen, yes or yes, because as humans, we will have different opinions, backgrounds, skill sets, points of view, perhaps OKR. So it's going to happen, yes or yes. So acknowledging the conflict and encourage the open communication is kind of a stage one. But I think that working together to identify the root cause and to actually find a mutual solution includes the active listening part, includes the empathy that we just highlighted so much, right? It includes that focus on what is the common ground that we are trying to achieve as this very diverse group of humans. And at the same time is how do we ensure that this is giving us an opportunity to share that we have different perspectives and different points of view. So I don't see conflict as something negative necessarily. It can be part of the journey. And I think if we acknowledge that conflict and give that opportunity to have that open communication and see what is the root cause and how we're going to accomplish that common goal are kind of key strategies to navigate it. But recognizing that we are humans and engineers, but humans, is kind of a stage one of the equation, right? As individuals, we bring different perspectives, and that can generate conflict. It's part of the journey.
Yeah. And I'll add, I've been studying a lot recently about emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. And in my experience, these are really valuable skills in dealing with conflict. The more sort of tools that you have in your toolbox to address those things rather than internalizing and kind of conflict is going to support you on those teams.
Spot on.
So the last question I want to offer to Hoda, and that is, what recommendations would you offer to educators to teach effective teamwork and empathy-driven design and collaboration in STEM?
Sure, yeah. So I know the context of this is STEM, but I think even more importantly for STEM teachers and STEM educators and professors, is important that we consider, again, respect, trust, humility, and also humanity in our work. And I again, like I mentioned before, that I start everything by talking about the importance and the value of teamwork, value of design thinking, collaboration. When I'm going to do any engineering project, I know it's amazing that all schools from different ages are using the Stanford School Design process, and we go through that to build a bridge or build a roller coaster or something like that. But I would encourage everyone to, all the educators out there, to think about more meaningful stories in their education, in their lesson plans before they get into designing a bridge. If any kid, any student is taking engineering in any age, they already are thinking about bridges and cars and whatever that is the stereotypic engineering role. But if we don't take a step back to tell those kids, to tell those students, undergrad students, to realize that engineering, what Erica said, engineering is not just, or even Catalina said, it's not only about building bridges or cars and like the technical aspect, but it's also about us being humans, also about us helping humans, it's also about human-centered design, it's also about empathy. They're not going to understand that aspect, that important aspects of engineering. So I would encourage everyone to, and I'll give a very short example of a lesson plan that I use with different ages, from little kids to professional engineers and undergrad engineering when I'm invited to do some of those workshops. I encourage everyone to really dig deep into the understanding of empathy when we are teaching that design thinking. It's important that students really understand why we are talking about empathy, because it can be just something to check and then move on. Yeah, I thought about this client and I think this client needs this, or I asked this question from the client and I think they need this. So, but a little deeper, and why we do empathy, why it's important to do empathy, why it's important to even consider other people's needs and concerns and suggestions, and also the ethical considerations of any engineering work, any technological advancement that we do. So I give you in a very short lesson plan example that I do. I have these different cards that kids just play with them. The cards have different imaginary characters on. One of those cards has a picture of, it is called a tribal child. And then kids have to pick a character and start designing something for them, like a project, a random project. And in my workshops, when I'm focusing on empathy and ethical consideration aspects of engineering, I usually have that card and I give it to everyone and I ask them to design something simple, something to drink water out of. And then you'll see all the people in my workshop, they'll start designing something, design a mug, design a cup, design a water bottle. And then when they do it, they present it, I ask them, how do you know if that child really likes that? How do you know if that child really enjoys drinking from a water bottle? And then of course they will start by saying, oh, it's more sanitized, or it's like, this is what I like, this is what everyone like. And then I'm like, but that tribal child is not that everyone that you're talking about. How are we going to think about what they actually like, what they actually need, what they actually is tied to their background, to their culture, their values? And then I start talking about that, and that usually it will end up to a rich conversation. And I show some of the Roha Benjamin, which is also a scholar that works on ethics and technology and justice, some clips of her talks, so kids really understand that how not considering those ethical aspects and not actually having empathy with all the users will result in hurting a group or a population. So that was like a very short example of what I do, and it works with any age, but you have to just make sure that you facilitate that conversation, that it's the age and developmentally appropriate to your group.
Thanks so much, Hoda. So we've got some participation on this sort of takeaway poll that we should teach teamwork skills. Engineering requires a humanized approach. The DEI initiatives support effective teams. That teamwork is a skill. We have to teach it and learn to develop it. The teamwork requires trust, respect, humility, empathy, and understanding. I think this is a great set of takeaways from today's panel. And since you've signed up to participate in this, I'll send a recap of this in the next day or so. And I'm so grateful to our panelists, to Catalina, Hoda, Shiroshi, and Erica for joining us For those of you I haven't seen in a while, it's a really joy to see you and hear from you and to celebrate in your success. And to our participants, again, thank you for joining us. I do want to acknowledge again our funder, the Bossier Parish Community College, for the grant that they received to support this series. And a special thanks to Monica Lawrence for her leadership in championing this work. If you are interested in receiving feedback, you can drop that, you can share that with us on our website. You can go to engineerinclusion.com/thanks. You can evaluate the session and you can request a certificate if you need a certificate of participation in today's event. And so we are so grateful for your time, to the panelists and to our participants for joining us today. Any final thoughts or words you want to offer, panelists, to the audience before we sign off today?
I'll take a quick second to say there were so many great things shared, and thank you for having us. If there's one key takeaway from my end, I think I would say intentions are not good enough, especially to the educators and professionals out there. Make sure you can think about ways that you can mechanize how you can be more collaborative and inclusive on your teams. Just not rely on good intentions. They're great, but they don't cut it. That I think that would be my top recommendation.
Thanks so much, Hiroshi. My grandma always said the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So maybe it's the same here when we talk about teamwork. Erica, Hoda, Catalina?
Sure, I can jump in. I can say something just really quick. Be clear about the problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
So simple and definitely overlooked. And especially when you're trying to solve a problem as a team, to make sure that you're all trying to solve the same problem. If you take the time to do that, it can sometimes feel a little bit counterintuitive, right? We want to get to the problem, we want to solve it, we want to, cut to the chase, we want to solve things quickly. However, when we take the time to really define and explicitly say, like, what are we assuming? What is the definition of success here? What are we, like, just all get on the same page there and be really clear, because sometimes we, even to ourselves, are not clear on the problem we're trying to solve. Well, maybe we thought it was this, but it's actually this. This is what we really want. So start here instead. It'll save you a lot of time and frustration and make your teams more effective. Thanks, Catalina, for letting me jump in.
No, and I will just add, embrace your humanity. This is a great time to have skills in science, technology, engineering, and math. Embrace your humanity and maximize that opportunity.
And I just want to say one sentence: make sure that you consider respect, trust, and ethical considerations in everything that you do, especially when we do engineering and STEM broadly.
I love that. Yes, we have to consider these ethical considerations for when we don't, we can deal with the repercussions of maybe not working in the most ethical manner. So with that, again, thank you so much for your participation, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.